Hi, I'm Gary and this is episode 87 of EV Musings, a podcast about renewables, electric vehicles and things that are interesting to electric vehicle owners. On the show today, we'll be getting to know EVA England. What's it about, who's involved and what can it do for you? If you're hearing this, it's because you're not subscribed to my channel as a patron. EV Musings patrons get lots of nice goodies, including post-credit sequences, such as the one at the end of this episode, early access to episodes, patron-only episodes, and more. Head over to patreon.com/evmusings to sign up. Before we start, I wanted to remind you that the new Moto brand motorway service area has opened on junction 1 of the M6 in England. It's a couple of miles north of the M6-M1 junction. Nothing special about this, you might think, but it's the first motorway service area in the UK to take advantage of the new electric highway installations with the 12 new tritium chargers, alongside 12 new Tesla superchargers. Rob Shaw from RS Thinks and I went up there on Sunday, and if you head over to his YouTube channel in a couple of days, you'll see the results of our endeavours. Our main topic of discussion today is EVA England. Cast your mind back to the roundtable at the end of Season 3, Episode 56, link in the show notes. We had Heather Kennedy, Dan Caesar, Jonathan Porterfield and Jill Noel on there. Jill was talking about EVA England and what their aims are. Here's what she said.
The aims and objectives of EVA England are to promote electric vehicle use in England, also to promote the environmental and health benefits of electric vehicles to the public, to represent the interests of current and prospective electric vehicle drivers, and to provide services to EV drivers in England.
Recently, EVA England has ramped up their presence in the EV field, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to get Jill back on and talk about what they're doing in the EV space. Since we last spoke in August 2020, EVA England has been very active.
We know that government announced towards the end of last year that the phase-out date of all new sales of petrol and diesel cars and vans was to be brought forward to 2030. So ahead of that, in the run-up to that, we issued a survey to gauge views and to feed into the government consultation on that phase-out date. So that was a very tangible piece of work, and we were really, really pleased to receive, I think it was over 1,100 responses to that survey that we packaged up and presented to the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles. As well as that, we've worked hard to secure some funding to get us going, so that we can take a member of staff on board. Because at the end of the day, most of us as sort of board members have day jobs. So we need, people dedicated to working for our membership base. What we've also done is we have delivered a survey of over 1,200 EV drivers to feed into the government's consultation on the consumer experience on public electric vehicle charge points, and we're really hoping that will lead to a significant improvement in consumers' ease and access to EV charging. Although it has to be said that, if you look at the stats on ZapMap, I always find it incredible to see, the increase in numbers of public charge points. But of course, we need to make sure that they are working, they're in the right place, and they are accessible by anybody who needs it. We've also delivered a case study campaign, around the announcement of the 2030 phase-out date. So we've worked very closely with industry and media to share drivers' views on different topics. We've worked closely with an organisation called New Automotive and also Octopus Electric Vehicles to deliver a case study campaign, really trying to show real electric car drivers' views and experiences and bring those to a wider audience. We've also delivered a webinar on the results of that, which I hope was very well received. Mm-hmm. And sort of underlying all this, the reason that we opened to members in March this year, so there was a few months gap there, was that we were really, really keen and saw it as absolutely essential that we had a robust CRM system in place to manage all that lovely personal data, in terms of our membership base. So as with those kind of things, that takes a little bit of time to get right and to put into place. But yeah, we've got all the foundations in place to make sure that we can work, to the best of our ability for our members.
One of the things you mentioned in the list is a survey of EV drivers. Can you take me through that survey, please?
We had 1,025 English EV drivers participated in the survey. I say English, it's because we did have responses from Scotland and from Wales, Northern Ireland and Ireland. However, as the Electric Vehicle Association for England, in terms of presenting a report to government, we focused on the England EV drivers' responses.
Indeed, yeah.
Because, of course, we know that EVA Scotland is a really well-established and very, very kind of successful and active sister organisation in Scotland. There's one now in Northern Ireland and emerging ones in Ireland and Wales as well. Mm-hmm. So going back to the survey, we found that most respondents charged at home and sometimes used public charge points. In terms of payments, contactless was deemed actually overwhelmingly the easiest form of payment, with most people preferring being able to use contactless across all charge points. And contactless remained the most popular choice for both destination and rapid charging.
Yeah.
84% of respondents didn't like the idea of a call or text-based payment solution, which is probably understandable.
Yeah.
In terms of roaming, then 87% of the respondents to the survey said they'd welcome the ability to use one smartphone app across all public charge point networks. 71% said they'd welcome the ability to use one RFID card across all public charge point networks. And I'm going to say but 41% of respondents said they'd welcome the ability to use a QR code across public charge point networks.
I believe ease of use in public charging is absolutely paramount. We've said that so many times on this podcast, and the survey results really did back that up.
I had a really an absolutely seamless public charging experience last week. I've had an electric e-Sprinter van on test.
Yeah.
So I took it into North Wales along the A55. Fortunately, there wasn't much traffic due to the time of day, and I used one of the Osprey charges just off the A55. I used my electric juice card that I have from Octopus Energy, and it was just literally a case of plug in, tap, and I'm charging. And it was and then I get billed to my home energy account. It's just it was just a brilliant and easy public charging experience.
If you go back over the results Jill just shared, there are a couple of anomalies that come up. One is that everybody prefers things to be contactless, but then Jill also said that specifically for roaming, RFID and apps are the chosen preferred solutions. I guess this is a result of having two different questions that look for two different sorts of answers. I'm not sure there's an issue here. I guess it's just that people are looking for options. If you cast your mind back to episode 3 of the podcast, we talked about mainstream dealers and the fact that they don't provide the level of education a lot of new users need for EVs. This is especially true of those who are not early adopters, but are slightly ahead of the mainstream.
I've done going slightly off track, I've done a few. In fact, I feel like I'm almost living in North Wales at the moment now that we can go back over the border. But I've taken my children out over the Easter holidays for a couple of day trips into North Wales, and we've stopped at services. And actually, no, not North Wales, but anyway, we've stopped at services recently a couple of times. Motorway service area charges. You probably know who I'm referring to here.
Yep.
And although we haven't needed to charge, so we haven't parked in the EV charging bays, each time there have been people who are clearly wondering what on earth's going on. And, so much to the chagrin of my children, we've gone over to see if we can help. But it just needs to be, the signage needs to be clear. It just needs to be a simple, easy experience, I think. And actually, just going back to the electric van charging experience, it was a brilliant it was a brilliant way to charge and so easy and straightforward.
I find myself doing similar things as well when it comes to chargers, and people who obviously don't know too much about what they're doing. There is an anecdotal story of the iPace driver who plugged his car into the AC socket at a BP Pulse rapid charger because the dealer had pointed to the charge port when he bought the car and said, "You plug it in here." And because the AC charger was the one that fit, that's the one he used. It's just a complete lack of education around electric vehicles. I think it's getting better. It's certainly better than it was when Nissan and Renault were the only mainstream manufacturers making EVs, but it still has a long way to go. So is there anything in the EVA England roadmap to try and drive education or improve education for electric vehicle owners?
Yeah, absolutely. We really need and want to build up our kind of consumer focused support material in that regard. Joining EVA England, you will receive a very what we hope is informative information pack that takes you through the whole EV journey, which includes helping you out with all the different terminology, the different languages used, and I think what we need as well is and this is one of the things that came out of the survey. We need a lot more, we need a lot clearer and accessible signage.
Mm-hmm.
Actually both on and around the chargers and the charging bays themselves, but actually signposting on the roads.
But education needs to come from several directions. The dealers are one of these.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it's a piece of work that we can jump on, actually, working with dealers and understand how we can, how they can be sort of better informed and engaged. I'm sure there are already organisations that are working with dealers, but at EVA England, we're all about collaboration. So we'd really like to, open up that discussion and do what we can to support there.
The thing I recognise from the EVA England survey is that the results were exactly what every EV driver I've spoken to would have expected. I wonder if there were any unexpected results from the survey.
Yeah, I tell you what didn't surprise me is that we found that in terms of reliability, 99% of drivers think that charge point operators should be required to meet a certain standard of reliability, with actually well over 90%, so 93% of drivers thinking that a 99% reliability standard is fair. And on pricing, and again, I think this probably isn't surprising, 94% would prefer pence per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
So I think that's all probably not too sort of too
Unexpected, controversial.
Yeah, that's the one. And also we found that in terms of kind of opening up data, then most drivers do use an app or a website to locate charge points. So thinking about the electric van thing. So, could we encourage users of ZapMap or PlugShare or other such apps to just, log when it looks unlikely that an electric van, for example, could use that charging space. But also 98% agree that having access to real-time information in advance of a charge would save them time. And again, probably that's not unexpected.
Just as a side note, I want to throw something into the conversation now that might change listeners' perspectives regarding charger availability. Let's take an imaginary charge point operator. We'll call it Eco Pulse Point Charging. Imagine they have one of the largest network of charge points in the country, and the large majority of which are 7 kilowatt posts. However, they are most widely known for their smaller number of rapid chargers, many of which get a bad rap for being out of order quite a lot. Let's say they have, 3,000 charge points, of which 700 are rapid. That means that 23% of the network is rapid chargers. Due to the relative simplicity of the 7 kilowatt posts, the number that break down is quite small. Therefore, the majority of issues they have are on the minority of rapid chargers, i.e. the ones people need to have working when they get there. If they have a 99% uptime guarantee, that means that of the 3,000 chargers they have, 30 of those chargers could be out at any given time. 30 chargers from 3,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but 30 chargers from 700 is a lot bigger percentage than 1%. It's closer to 4.5%. That means that in a network of 700 rapid chargers, you have almost 5 times as big a chance of finding one out of order than the stats would suggest.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, and there's no reason at all why we can't raise that with government. And why not look at it in a slightly different way? Why not consider putting a slightly different metric on it?
Mm.
Because we need to take a pragmatic approach, don't we? And we are still at, I would say, relatively early stages in this journey.
Yeah.
We need to recognise that if we are, if something like that is actually going to skew the sort of the robustness of the charging infrastructure for consumers, then it's the right time now to raise it and do something about it.
I had what I assume was a really silly question for Jill. There's an EVA Scotland, and we had Heather Kennedy from that organisation on the podcast in the last but one roundtable. And there's one that's just started for Northern Ireland. And then there's EVA England. Are these country-specific associations worthwhile? Why not have one EVA UK?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the policies are different. Geographies vary from region to region. And the fact that, if we take EVA Scotland, for example, as I said before, really well established and respected membership organisation, they've been going for a good number of years now. And when EVA England, when we got together and started sort of saying, actually, there's a gap here in England for electric vehicle association, very much consumer focused to support English EV drivers, then there was no way we were going to step on anybody else's toes. And we've been really cognizant of the fact that there are emerging associations in other UK regions. But I think it is important to remember that legislative drivers are different. Policies vary as well, and those funding mechanisms that are available vary as well. So it actually, in many ways, it does make sense. However, we do talk to each other on a reasonably regular basis, as well as our international counterparts as well. Not least of all Norway, Australia, and America and others as well.
EVA England recently opened their doors to membership. They've had their website active with some great information on there for several months now. I wanted to know what membership gets you that you can't already get for free on the EVA England website.
So yeah, we opened to members, I think, in March this year. And what it means is that a growing membership base means that we can continue to work really hard for our members on issues that are closest to their hearts. And actually, when we are applying, which we are doing, to get involved in projects, to get in, to secure more funding as an organisation to really move forward and grow, then we need to make really concerted efforts to become a sustainable organisation. So in terms of our revenue, the mix of our revenue, it needs to come from members, it needs to come from other sources as well, whether that's project work or equitable funding sources. So we can't just rely on funding, I don't think, because in order to be successful in that funding, we need to demonstrate that we're seeking to become a truly sustainable organisation. Whether we could be self-funding through membership monies, I'm not sure we could. I think it will need to be a mix, but we definitely need to demonstrate that sustainability because we absolutely want to grow, and our membership is a really important aspect to that. And in terms of what members will receive, so when we launched, we were really, really delighted to have partnered with Right Charge, so the EV charger and EV tariff comparison website. And so anybody who joins EV England will benefit from a £50 discount on any electric vehicle charger from the Right Charge website. So probably more attractive to prospective EV drivers, so to somebody who's thinking about or just about to get an electric car. We're also able to offer a £50 discount on an EV subscription from Onto.
Okay, yeah.
So, which I think is a brilliant idea. But I think it'd be great if I had a significant other who wasn't sure about electric cars And if I was feeling quite flush, maybe I would, I'd consider getting that subscription to Onto as a gift, a Christmas, birthday, whatever. And I think that £50 reduction in that could be quite attractive. So I think that's a really, really nice
Yeah.
at the moment. But we've got a really interesting pipeline of membership benefits as well. So it absolutely doesn't stop there. So watch this space, because we absolutely recognise that as much as we feel, and I think, well, it's great, because if you join EVA England, you become part of this growing EV community. And of course, we absolutely recognise that there are, the EV community it's a myriad of regional groups, of Facebook groups, of many other groups. So becoming a member of EVA England, of course, you're going to be able to tap into all those other brilliant organisations and groups that essentially have the same aims as EVA England, and that's to see the acceleration and uptake of EVs across England and actually and across the UK, of course. But member of EVA England, you get lots and lots of tangible benefits. You get a brilliant support pack, you get charging etiquette guide, and there will be more and more benefits as time goes on.
So what's on the table for the next 6, 12, 18 months for EVA England?
Yeah, we're in discussions at the moment. So for the next 6 months, we're looking at a really, really exciting campaign, quite a high-profile campaign to support EV uptake. Essentially a communications campaign that we'd really, really like to get off the ground. We have a bunch of really brilliant and engaged honorary members to EVA England, so we'd love to do more work with them actually over the next 6 months and beyond. We're also doing a piece of work in the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow in November, because we absolutely recognise that is a key event in terms of not just the UK, but on a global platform, and EV's big part of that whole climate change agenda, of course. The pipeline of membership benefits. We've got some really interesting project applications underway at the moment as well, actually. So there's lots of things that we've got in the pipeline, Gary.
Obviously, the EVA England has a great mandate to help EV drivers in England. They're talking and liaising with other entities in the EV space, other EVA groups, the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles in government, etc. So please join the EVA if you live in England. It costs £20 for the year, and it really helps provide a great voice for EV drivers. Head over to their site, link in the show notes, where you can set up a direct debit for membership payment. My final question to Jill was the Queen for a Day one. What would she do if she had absolute power and was Queen for a day?
So I would cut the price of any battery electric vehicle by 50%, and I would bring in interest-free loans for all battery electric vehicles, both new and second-hand.
Interest-free loans for new and second-hand cars is something they do in Scotland already at the moment, so I totally support that idea as something that EV drivers would benefit from. Many thanks to Jill for her time. It's time for a cool EV or renewable thing to share with you listeners. German electric utility company ENBW has announced it's implementing a flagship charging station at the Kamener-Kreuz Autobahn interchange. When complete, the 52 charging points will make it the largest public fast charging station in Europe, according to the company. Energie Baden-Württemberg AG, or ENBW for short, is one of the largest electric utility companies in Germany. It moved into EV charging over the last couple of years and now has 13 large fast charging stations and over 350 fast charging sites in Germany, with an additional 50 large stations in the construction or planning stage. The Carmen site will have charging at up to 350 kilowatts, with solar panels providing up to 120 kilowatts of electricity and feed any surplus energy back into the local grid. Not only that, but the points will be illuminated and covered. It's not quite the electric forecourt approach that GridServe are taking, but with 52 chargers, solar and feeding to the grid, it's certainly very welcome for EV drivers in Germany. And that's the show for today. Hope you enjoyed listening to it. Many thanks to Jill for coming back and talking about EVA England. All Access and VIP patrons, please stay tuned for some post-credits goodness where I'm nattering on for a little while about battery recycling. If you want to contact me, please use EV Musings' Twitter account MusingsEV, or I can be emailed at evmusings@gmail.com. If you want to support the podcast and the newsletter, please consider contributing to become an EV Musings patron. The link is in the show notes. If you want a quick reference ebook to read on your Kindle, I wrote a little something called So You've Gone Electric. It's available on Amazon worldwide for the measly sum of 99p or equivalent, and it's a great little introduction to living with an electric car. At the moment it's free on Kindle Unlimited, or if you're in the Kindle lending library, please check it out. Links for everything we've talked about in the podcast today are in the description. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe. It's available on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave a review as it helps raise visibility and extend our reach in search engines. If you've reached this part of the podcast and you're still listening, thank you. Why not let me know you've got to this point by tweeting me at MusingsEV and at EVA Official with the words, join EVA England and reap the benefits, hashtag if you know you know. Thanks as always to my co-founder Simon. You know, he's always wanted to see how far he can go on his e-skate. Every time he goes out, he pushes it further and further. Now he thinks he's reached his limit. It's about as far as he's willing to go.
I've done going slightly off track, I've done a few. In fact, I feel like I'm almost living in North Wales at the moment now.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.